I saw Ready Player One yesterday, and of course, going into it, I was skeptical because I really hated the trailer. Thought I was really in for something trying, but I really connected to it, and I think I got myself in a headspace where I said, well, I'm going to accept this and just go with it, and in that way, despite the fact that I thought it was a little too long.
It is too long.
Maybe 20 minutes, and I wish some of it was different, but I really, really had fun with it. I particularly loved the opening, race sequence, which I thought was incredibly, wonderfully manic, and like nothing I'd seen before, which, that's really what I go to Spielberg movies for. And I loved the terrifically romantic dance scene.
It's got more going for it than it lets on in the trailer, I think. I really think that once you get past the trailer and once you get past, I think the movie has moments of genius. I just don't think there's enough of that. I think the movie does get bogged down. I've seen the movie twice, not because I loved it, because I went to go see it late Thursday night when it opened, and I think I fell asleep for 5 or 10 minutes. So I wanted to go back and watch it again.
I like that they cast Ty Sheridan, who I think is one of our best young actors.
He's great.
I thought Olivia Cooke was great as the female lead, and it's interesting seeing Mark Rylance, and I hope is going to be the kind of effects, the de-aging effects that we're going to see in The Irishman, later on.
I hope so.
And because I thought that was very effective and pretty seamless. Of course, incredible effects and art direction and just design in general, and of course Janusz Kaminski photography is terrific, and there was just a whole lot of it I really, really enjoyed, and just went with the flow on it, and not that I don't have some quibbles with it, but I'd watch it again, which is really, I'd love to see it on the biggest screen possible, which I did see it on a huge screen, but I'd watch it again for sure.
Here's a question for you, because just without having seen the movie, just perceptually, it just seems like when Spielberg returns to the mass entertainment well, it feels like he's going backwards. It feels like he's matured beyond that. And
it does.
It seems half-hearted almost to me.
Can I add something to that? I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of truth in what you're saying. But what's interesting, yes, the last time he went back and did that, we got the Crystal Skull, and a very mixed bag at best. I don't want to say it's a complete dud, because we're going to have to deal with Indiana Jones 5, and we're going to have to watch Crystal Skull again, I guess. I don't think you can get away with saying that Indiana Jones was taking a shower and it never happened. I don't think you can get away with that. But that's a great point, Jamie, because if you look at the movies he's made in between, there'll be very much more serious adult fare. He's definitely going for that.
Yeah.
He's much more mature. But I want to say something about that. I think he has a lot more success here than he does with Crystal Skull, certainly more than Tintin, which is not a bad film, by the way. It's just it's a movie that, like John Carter or Tarzan, its expiration date was long ago. It's just not. It's not for Tintin is great for its time, the graphic novels and everything, but at 21st century, sadly, that's a hard sell. That's a very hard sell. Actually, I don't think there's anything wrong with the movie. But I can see where people would say this is a step backwards, but this is also where the guy who is one of the best when he does this, and when he gets something that he can sink his teeth into, he's the best at it. And And I really think there are magical moments in this movie. And yes, the Shining sequence is actually one of them.
Unbelievable! Absolutely the height of the movie.
No other director could do that. Christopher Nolan would not be able to get away with that, and I know he's like one of his. We would call him definitely an heir in many ways to Kubrick, but Spielberg's able to get away with that. That's what makes it so. Because you almost feel like you're trespassing when you're watching that film. You feel like you're trespassing.
Well,
in that sequence.
the only thing that took me out of it was I guess they couldn't get the rights to use Jack Nicholson's image, and I think that would have, enhanced that sequence.
Yes.
I still think it's beautiful and really, I don't know, just one of the great things that cinema's going to give us, I think, this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you first see that, when they give the hints and the clues what it is, and then you see the you're like, holy shit, what am I about to watch here?
Yes, it's true.
You don't know, and that's what. It's a magical sequence. It's really quite a sequence.
There's a way that Spielberg's perfect for this kind of thing, immersing himself in other kind of films and media, because he himself, he's such a master at assembling a frame.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also a master at capturing, kind of like a character like character actors will dive into a role and they'll inhabit like a real life person. He can do that with directors, with other directors, because I mean I do feel a sense of the Kubrickian in AI, obviously, and it's not just story; it's something in the feel of the movie. That there are elements that feel so much like Kubrick. And then you have elements that are clearly Spielberg, and it's the awkward mesh of those two that make that movie so singular for me.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a distinct feeling of Costa-Gavras in Munich. I mean, you feel it in the marrow of the movie.
Yeah,
it's almost like he's inhabiting Costa-Gavras in that movie. It's
that's a great point, Jamie. That's a really good point. May I just go back though, and if I'm repeating myself from a previous show when we talked about the Kubrick series, forgive me if we've talked about this, but if you go back to something like the scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark and Kubrick where they unload the Ark at the end, and the way that's framed, just like the scene with the monolith on the moon in 2001, there's always been these like hints of Kubrick throughout his career. So I
find that scene, really recalls, something like Orson Welles and Citizen Kane in a lot of ways.
Right.
The warehouse thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not the warehouse, but the scene when they're on the island and they're unearthing the Ark, the Nazis are unearthing the Ark, and the way it's shot with the ramps going down.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and remember in the first time the monolith is on the moon, the astronauts are going to, and then it cuts to Jupiter. Remember?
Oh, sure.
That. So, I mean, there are moments like that you see there are these hints of Kubrick in his work. So that's right. It's not, it just seems like he was the only director who could get away with that and do a very good job, by the way.
That's interesting. That's interesting, too, because the first time Spielberg met Kubrick was on the set of The Shining, because wherever they shot, I don't know, I think they shot in Elstree. I don't think it was Pinewood, but I think it was Elstree. But he visited Kubrick on the set of The Shining because he needed that stage for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
And Kubrick was over schedule. So they're like, he's never going to get this fucking thing done. We're never going to be able to start shooting.
He should have expected that.
But let me ask you guys about James Dean.
Well,
you've seen it. Okay, sure, go.
Let me say one more thing about Ready Player. I'm so sorry. When I say that about Ready Player, I don't mean to denigrate Spielberg for going back to this mass entertainment because nobody does it better than he does. But at the same time, what I'm saying is, I think he's outgrown it in in the idea that this is the kind of movie that his disciples should be making.
Right.
Spielberg did it better than anybody else. He inspired a whole generation of filmmakers that make these kinds of movies. Mm-hmm. Spielberg's doing something else now, and as he should be. He's on another plane now.
I mean,
he's done that.
I appreciate it on the level of kind of an experiment, a directorial experiment in terms of trying to reconnect with an earlier visage, and I think he does it successfully, and in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like we've quite seen all of this before, although it has resemblances, of course, to Tron and to the Matrix, but not from Spielberg,
But it's like it has those references, obviously, because it's kind of, you want to tell some of these millennials that these movies that were not that great the first time around, but it's interesting though, because he's really responsible. As Jamie said, a lot of the directors, of course, like a lot of the great Marvel movies that are made or whatever, they're all influenced by this man. If it was not for Spielberg, and we couldn't have a lot of the movies that we have today. I mean, it's impossible, and he knew how to do it. So he comes back and he does this, and for the most part, it works.
Yeah. And watching those movies, you think, well, he did inspire a lot of people, but there's only one Spielberg.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's a line at the end. There's Mark Rylance's last line of the movie. Only Spielberg could have delivered that. Only. The way it's just set up, the way the whole movie is framed and everything, you're just like, what he says to Ty Sheridan, you're like, yep, that's a Spielberg movie. Yep. I mean, you can't help but think that. I actually think the MVP is Simon Pegg, though. The second time watching it, he really stood out for me. I mean, really, there's something. He's like almost like the heart and soul of the movie in some ways. The character he plays.
Yeah. Yeah, he's good. I always like to see him. So, I really like the movie. I liked the movie a lot more than I thought I was going to.
Mm-hmm.
I was dreading it, and I really, really loved it. Reservations aside.